Let's talk about, so here's the thing, and I'll put it to you first, right? We talk about the future of Islamic fintech. So maybe a good starting point, I'll get to both of you, is like, what is the state of Islamic fintech then?
What is?
What is the state of Islamic fintech? Before
The
we talk
state,
about the
oh.
future, like,
Yeah.
what's the position right now?
I think it's in its early stages. There's not enough education out there. There's not enough adoption out there. And maybe I think it's what Umair was talking about. It's maybe there's a hesitance to go and actually approach this discussion because, like, we look at a majority of our, let's go without going into detail, but in each of the businesses we look at, we're like, can the funds be secured in a Sharia compliant manner? And that is obviously that's available in this country, it's available in many countries, and you start there. But actually, as to the actual underlying transactions, you need specialist advice because each transaction is very different. But I think the fear is you then close yourself to external investors because then they start to think, okay, is this Sharia? Does it mean it's only for Muslims?
Yeah.
Does it mean you can't scale it? Does it mean, what does it mean actually? So I think that is the indirect effect of having it.
Very interesting.
Totally compliant.
You want to add to that, just your thoughts on the state of fintech?
Sure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and shukran for the opportunity. I think I look at it from a perspective of there's a heck of a lot of opportunity that exists in the technology aspect in support of finance. As a country, I think we've always separated the two. As Mufti Umair says, fintech's about bringing the two together. I find that we're not active enough in solutioning for financial solutions using technology. Technology is effectively an enabler. Finance has been around forever in time. The challenge on us, when we look at an Islamic finance community, it's about circulating the value of that 1 rand 6 times over. Now, you can do that in a very manual way and change the rand every time we transact, or you could do it through technology. So the short of it is there's not enough of the mechanisms to be able to circulate that rand 6 times as a minimum in the Islamic finance.
And why do you think there's not enough?
I think the mechanisms to promote that, we spoke a lot about today not being in our own hands, and we're dependent on various other platforms and facilities outside of our control. We need to start looking at the enablers of that. We talk about value chains. Many of us in corporates or in business, we understand value chains. I was one of those lazy people that you mentioned in corporates. And for me, it was about getting to the ground and actually understanding that and creating mechanisms where transactions can take place across the value chain, not just particularly from retailer to consumer, but beyond that. What enables the retailer to be able to service that consumer? What enables the consumer to do their own business beyond that as well? So it's across the value chain, Ashraf.
Lots to consider there. The point that was brought up by the previous two speakers about it's nowhere near the potential that it should be, right? From your perspective, in terms of your understanding from a Sharia perspective, but also just business and tech, what can we therefore do to change that narrative?
I think that's a bit of a loaded question, and then lunch is waiting. But if we look as there's a lot of things I think there's smart people like the one sitting in the room here that are building these very clever ideas in solutioning for problems that are out there. But I think where lack comes from is that there is a disconnect between the clever people and the people on the street who need to consume that. So I think if we're able to transform that into some sort of education and help them go viral, is that if we're able to for the consumers to take it in bite sizes and able to understand what the solution is there, then I think we'll see faster growth and we'll see a greater take-up in that space.
Okay. Just to remind you, just from the volunteer side, just because we want to be tight with time here, just give us the countdown in terms of how many minutes we have left for this. Not that we're done, I know that, but just let me know, just come up with a notice up front. So some questions here.
Sorry.
You want to add to that?
Can I say one thing what Mufti Umair said? And this all comes down to execution. So the way we operate is very different. I hire my sales team from the community where my customers reside. So what do? They do two or three things. One is they can onboard a customer. But it's not just onboarding like this is what we do and download the app, whatever. It's education around the product. It's education around the pricing. And what did, what else it adds? It's a support layer. Because if our customers, English is not their first language, they feel very intimidated coming into bank branches or formal looking environments, somebody with a suit and a tie. They can't ask questions because they cannot communicate. So you need to go down to the level where they operate, not expect them to come to you. And once it gets, and support and trust, they build a trusted layer because they know this guy is from my community, he speaks my language, I know he lives around the corner. If there's a problem, I know where to get my money. And the moment you get that to click, the virality kicks in. Because the segment that we serve is a segment that likes to share. They have the sharing mindset. If it's good for me, I think it's going to be good for you. And I'm going to tell you about it. And that's how you get this virality. It doesn't work in where the DNA, the organization, is not such that allows this type of execution to happen.
Which is very interesting because I mean, you want to add to that because you know a lot of what we speak about, and I often because we know if Sharia is if the concept of Sharia and Sharia fintech is beneficial. You know, I made the point earlier on about my phone. I said we use it doesn't matter where it comes from, if it benefits us, right? That means is there a need for, and I need to choose my words carefully, that the benefits of Sharia banking or fintech needs to be rebranded to a broader audience. That means even people who are not of the Muslim faith. We're like, you know what? This is just great.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can have a conference just about this topic on its own because, you know, you learn about the UN's sustainable goals and you look at that in correlation to Islam and the Sharia and what it advocates and you see the natural correlation between these things. So we have a benefit in naturally understanding that it's in our DNA to create economic structures, functions, etc., which are of good value and the world is looking for that. I think on the one side, we've emerged as a consumer that's very conscious and we want good solutions. It's no more from a banking or investment perspective. It's not just returns. It must be returns with a goodness factor to it. Now we talk about the education and I think for us there, and you know, these platforms are excellent because there's some myths associated with finance. You know, for example, the concept of takaful. We as laymen say it's insurance. And that's where the tabooness comes from it. And we say, no, that's not for us to go to. Takaful is an entirely different system based on mutual trust, share of risk and reward.
So to give a translation is incorrect.
Exactly.
To say,
you know,
what is takaful? Oh, it's
it,
insurance. It's
exactly. Treat it as what the purest form of takaful is. Break it down through educational structures to say there's a mechanism, there's a vehicle in Islam from a Sharia perspective that's there. One more example from Ashraf. I know time is against us. You know, we then need to start owning our space. You know, what I mean is like instead of advocating it's a form of insurance. No, takaful is very different. When you say I'm involved in financial services and you know you get that financial advisors, are we prepared to classify ourselves as a Sharia financial advisor? Not anywhere near the expert level of Mufti Umair in terms of advocating the Sharia, but have a working understanding of what financial advice means, which all of us need, supported by the concepts of Islamic finance.
Yeah, good point. Right, two questions before I think we can wrap up. Just remind me of time, right? So two quick questions. One is, in a world dominated by the Western financial principles, what's your thoughts on where and how we begin to build a Sharia-compliant ecosystem? And how do we work in a mutually beneficial ecosystem? Whoever wants to answer that, quick one, just raise your hands. A lot of it has been spoken about, but maybe just something specific.
I think it just needs a will and a desire and someone to champion it with enough capital. Okay. That's what you need because the big banks have demonstrated how much deposits they could attract, how many home loans they can give, how many buildings they can finance. We can do it.
Bottom line, do we care enough about it?
Yeah, I think
ultimately,
there's enough of an addressable market. So ethics aside, there's enough of a business case.